Hey everyone, it's Jason Langsdorff here with this week's episode of Learn Stuff with Jason. Or I guess it's just Learn with Jason now. We're here today with Auth0, who is working at as a DevRel at Auth0. And today we're going to be building a site in Gatsby that uses Auth0 for authentication. So Otto, welcome to the show, and I would love to get a little intro from you, kind of who you are, what you're about, maybe a little bit about how you got into your role now. And while you're doing that, I'm going to sign up for an Auth0 account.
Awesome. Sounds good. Hey, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Yeah, like Jason said, my name is Auth0, and I lead the dev evangelism team here at Auth0. And the way I kind of got my start in the industry was just started creating old school WordPress sites as kind of client work for a very long time. Then moved into e-commerce, and then a couple years ago, one of my buddies was working at Auth0 as a content writer. And at the time, I had written a couple of different blog posts on cool new technologies I was working on, and he suggested that I interview with Auth0, kind of see if it would be a good fit. Hit it off with them really well, and started off on the content team, just kind of learning new technologies, building demo projects, and just teaching developers, whether they're new or veterans of the industry, how to have better authentication, better security best practices. And about 2 years ago, they offered me the position of DevRel, where I would actually go out on in the road, um, at meetups, at conferences, giving workshops, talks, and basically just kind of working with developers hands-on, one-on-one, to teach them the identity concepts. And that's been a real blast. It's been a real passion of mine for a really long time, and that's where I am today. And here I am with Jason, teaching you guys about Auth on Twitch.
Very cool. And I think that was the perfect length of intro because I managed to get this done right as you finished. So let me zoom out a little bit so we can see what's going on. Let me switch over here. And okay, so we have a blank slate here. So what do you think we should do first? Should we create a Gatsby site first and then do the authentication later, or do you want to start with the Auth app and then build it in?
I think it would make more sense to start our Gatsby app first, just so
Okay.
we have an application to work with. But now that you're signed up, you're good to go and ready to implement Auth in just a couple minutes, so we can get to the fun part.
Okay, great. So I'm going to install the Gatsby starter Hello World. We're going to start with something nice and simple here so that we don't have a lot of boilerplate. Um, and this should get us up and rolling fairly quickly. And then we're going to see whether or not my window remembered what size to be, or else everybody gets to watch me try to fit this window into the narrow space that I have for casting. So let's do it. And oh man, it's even on the wrong side of the screen. Okay. This is going to get weird. Let's see. Where did it go? It is here. And I'm going to pull this across. And then I'm going to resize it a bunch. And eventually we're going to get here. Come on. There we go. Okay. So we've got ourselves a very simple boilerplate. It's a Hello World page. There are no other kind of dependencies. We've got a favicon in here. And so I think what we want to do is we want to set up a kind of client-only section of the site. And so to do that, we're going to create account.js. And anything that goes into account.js is going to be a privileged thing. So we'll start by just doing like account. Let's do for now just a make this auth protected. Okay, so we've got that. Need to export the default. All right, and then if I come back out here and start it, we'll do Gatsby develop. What we should see is I have something running at port 8,000. Okay, we're going to run it on 8001 today. All right, so we've got our site running. Let's go to our browser, and we've got our Hello World page. And if I come over here to account, we've got our to-do to make this auth protected. And so the way that this would typically work in an app, just from the Gatsby side, is we would want to have a kind of route-based auth page. So maybe I've got like my account itself I want to be authenticated, but then maybe I have some settings or something like that where, you know, I've got multiple pages inside of this. And so I want to just set that up really quickly where we would have like I want to be able to go to account/settings or account/billing, and I don't want that to necessarily do. We don't want to have to create a special page for that, each one of those. So instead, we are going to do dynamic routes in Gatsby. So I'm going to do dynamic routes, and where is it? One of these. This one. So this is going to take us in and show us how to do it. So what we're really looking for is a client-only route, and that just means that Gatsby's not going to try to it's not going to try to render it at all. And to make that happen, we're going to use this match path, and I want to just kind of grab this out exactly as is. We're going to create a Gatsby config down here, or a Gatsby node rather. And we're going to change this out to be account. And what this should do for us is when we go into creating pages, it's going to look for any pages that match account, and then it sets this match path. And that just means that, like, the star means anything under account is going to actually render back to the account page. So if I save this and we stop and start, what should happen, assuming I have done all of these things right, is that when we go to account/billing, account/settings, whatever those are, we should see our account page.
Got it. Okay.
And so now if I delete these, okay, perfect. So that's what we want. But now we're now completely in user land. Anything we build after this point is on us. So we're going to use reach router and actually build whatever these things are. And I think the way that we want to do that is by using Auth0, we're going to create a protected route. And I may have to look up how I've done this in the past because it's been a while since I've looked at it. But yeah, so basically we've got kind of a simple site set up. Let's look at maybe I actually already did this. Let's look at the simple auth example. And in this, does this have dynamic routes? It does. Okay, perfect. So we can use the simple auth example here, and I'm just going to pull in some of the basic details. So we'll need reach router. So we can do, what am I using? npm install reach router. And are we going to need anything else? No, we should be good. So get the reach router installed.
So I haven't used a reach router before. What's the difference between it and like React router?
So React Router and Reach Router are actually both built, at least in part, by Ryan Florence.
Okay.
Ryan started Reach as an effort to build like accessible by default building blocks for React. So the Reach Router intention is to be accessible and like keyboard navigable, and like work with screen readers. So it's a really, really cool initiative that he's done, and we switched over to it because we wanted to make sure that like when somebody's using a Gatsby site, what'll happen with a lot of client-side only apps or single-page apps is that when you navigate between pages, it doesn't tell you that the page has changed, and you just kind of have to know that. And so, and I'm speaking. This is all stuff that I just know from being told. I don't know how to use a screen reader. But if you do it properly, which is what Ryan has been working on in Reach, when it changes, it'll actually like change the focus to the new content and announce that a new page has arrived, so that you're functionally it's the same as React Router, but the impact is a lot better because you are now using. Um, let's see. I don't know if I can make the sound any louder. Actually, I don't know how to do that. Um, there's a question in the chat. I guess we'll speak up a bit. Yeah, let me. I apologize. You're just gonna have to turn up your volume because I don't know how to do that without completely stopping the stream. Um, so, anyways, that being said, we now have Reach Router, and I'm gonna go back into here, and let's go into the account page. I'm going to import the router, and in the router, if we go back to this example, there's a private route component that we have not built yet. We'll get there. And in the meantime, what we can do is we can say that different components have different routes. And so to avoid going a little over the top here, I'm going to just do like a couple really simple pages here. Let's go settings. Let's do another one for billing. And what we can do now is we can use the router, and then the way this should work is any component, we can just set a path on it and it'll show if that path is present. So let's do settings, and the path will be account and settings. And then we'll do another one for billing. And I think for the root component, we need something. What happens if we don't do anything? I don't know. Let's try it. Let's find out what happens. So let me start this up again.
That's the joy of coding. Just trying to see what happens.
I feel like 50+% of what I do is just winging it. So let's see. I go here, and all right, we have no default route. So let's create one, and we'll just call this one like home. And for this one, there's probably a way to set a default. I don't have the I don't have it in front of me here. Okay, so we've got home, and then we can go to settings, and it should, bring up our settings page, and then we can go to billing, and it brings up our billing page. So this is cool. This is what we wanted. We got everything that we needed here. So then we need to protect these. So let's go back to this example and look at the private route. Otto, I feel like I've made you a spectator over here. How are you feeling about things?
Doing good. Learning a whole lot. I got to say, most of my static site generators that I work with, these the last couple of months have been Hugo, which is the Go static site generator, and I've been a really big fan. But learning more about Gatsby, I saw a few tutorials on it, a few videos, and I'm kind of starting to be converted a little bit. So this is really
Cool.
insightful.
All right, so well, now I have another job. I want Gatsby to be your favorite framework by the time we get off this call.
Challenge accepted.
Okay, so kind of looking at this, what we're doing here is we have an auth utility, and this is where the Auth0 stuff starts to come in. And so I actually think at this point what we probably want to do is let's get the Auth0 stuff set up, and then we'll come back to this private route
Cool.
and figure out how to actually make it work. So back to my dashboard. I have a blank slate. What should I do next?
Yep. So the next thing you should do is since you created a brand new account, if you click into the applications tab on the left-hand side,
Okay.
you'll see that Auth0 created a generic default app, which we can use, but let's create a brand new application just so we can kind of show that whole process. So we'll hit create new application. We can name it, whatever we want. That's just for you. And since Gatsby runs entirely in the client side, we're going to create it as a single page application.
Okay.
So we'll say single page web app. And
Oh, there's a
then all
button.
we do is hit create at the bottom. And now what Auth0 did for us is it created a single page application, OAuth 2.0 OpenID Connect, single page app. And by default, it gave us this quick start page. If we already know what technology we're going to be using, whether, we have a number of different quick starts, whether it's Angular, React, Vue. Unfortunately, we don't have one for Gatsby yet, but I think that we should definitely have one just to make it easier for developers to implement. But since we don't have a quick start, let's go into our settings tab and
Okay.
just configure our application so that we can use it. So
All
here
right.
we have our the only two items that we really care about here are our domain and our client ID, which is gonna tell Auth0 from our Gatsby application what application we're working with. But we will also have to configure that allowed callback URL, which is going to call back once we log in from our Gatsby application. We're not going to do our authentication in the Gatsby application. So we're not going to do it at localhost 8001. When the user hits the login button, they're going to be redirected to Gatsby at auth0.com or whatever domain you created it with.
Right,
And
right.
it looks like it's Gatsby-livestream.
Yes. Up here on the right.
Yep.
Um, okay, so I said a web origin, you said?
The callback URL. So
Callback
we
URL.
can. Mhm. And then here we can, by convention, most companies will have a specific callback route, so we can append a callback endpoint to it,
Sure.
or we could just do it on the main route. It really depends on the developer. And if you're building a real-world application, you definitely want to handle that part of code in the callback. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're just building a demo, then kind of doing it on the main route is okay. But I think for good
Let's,
conventions, we should
yeah,
keep it at callback.
works for me. Okay, so we've got a callback URL. Do I need to set any others right now? Do I need
You
an
shouldn't
origin?
at the moment.
Okay.
By default, all the other ones will work without having to set anything. So we can
Okay.
skip now.
Okay. I have done it. All right. And then what's next?
So the next step we can look at is, since Gatsby is built on React, we can actually follow the React quick start, and it's
Okay.
gonna kind of give us the lay of the land on what to do next.
Okay.
So we did part one, configure Auth0. The
Okay.
next part would be to integrate Auth0 into your application. So if you click that, it should scroll you down to next steps.
Okay. That doesn't appear to work, but I can scroll down myself. Let's see. Cool. All right. Great. So we get to npm install. Let me scroll down a little bit so I can see it. I'm going to do
Mhm.
npm install auth0.js.
Mhm.
Okay. And then, let's see, we probably don't want that.
Yeah, we don't have to load it from the CDN. The next part, once we have the Auth0 JavaScript SDK in our Gatsby application, we can go ahead and create an authentication class. Um, we could just go back into our code and start writing our implementation.
Okay, great. So the way that this works, I'm gonna look this up really quickly because there's some Auth0, the library expects the window to be present, and because Gatsby does um, client side and server side building, we need to make sure that Auth0 only loads in the client side version. And that's okay because you wouldn't render any authenticated stuff on the server anyways. You wouldn't want to put people's details into a static file that you would put up on a CDN. So the way that we want to do that, though, is we want to make sure that we load Auth0 in a specific way. And the way that we did that was how? This doesn't seem
Um,
right. Nope, none of that is right. Where's the Auth0 stuff? Oh, that's because this is the wrong repo. we did it on the Gatsby store, and I'm just cheating here because I don't want to burn a ton of time trying to debug how we did that originally. Since we've
Yep.
already solved this problem, I think we should just take advantage of that. So we can import Auth0 as is, and then we've got this kind of check here for whether or not it's the browser. And so I'm going to keep that one open. And then the other thing that we had to do is in Gatsby node, I believe it was. Where was it? Yeah, here. So this one, just make sure that Auth0 doesn't try to load during the build step. And we do that by
Got it.
using the null loader. So I'm just going to copy that directly across. And we'll drop that down here. Let me zoom out just a little bit because that's hard to read. So we've got this here. We've got our dynamic routes, and now in the build, we're going to do. We're not going to load Auth0. So only in the build HTML phase, though. We're going to still load it during development. So let me close that, and then we're going to create a new file. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do a new file. We're going to call this utils and auth.js. And that first thing that we did was we imported auth0 from auth0.js. And then let me just grab that boilerplate real quick so that we don't burn a bunch of time on that. But so this is a little utility that you can have for whether or not it's the browser. We just check if type of window is not undefined, then we know that we're in the browser. So that's a little helper. And finally, we are going to do the setup like this. And the way that this works is we load Auth0 into a constant here so that we can use it, but we check that if it's the browser. If it's the browser, then we actually implement the Auth0. If not, we just return an empty object. And again, that's to prevent it from building during the initial break. So that being said, I have sort of taken over here, but I wanted to just kind of go through this so that we didn't get lost in the process.
Yep.
So should we create these environment variables, you think?
Yeah, that would be a good next step. And just for those of you guys that aren't familiar with how the OAuth spec works and why we set all of those different properties, the domain, the redirect URL, the audience, that's basically going to tell Auth0 the information about which application you're authenticating with. So the domain is going to be your specific tenant, your specific account. The client ID is your application within your tenant. The callback tells us once the user is authenticated, once they're logged in, where do we send them back? So in this case, it's going to be localhost 8001. And then finally, the audience field is really only used when you're talking to a different external API and you want to delegate access from your Gatsby application to a different API in the OAuth2 spec. So you don't need the audience if you're just building an internal application and you know which APIs you're going to be accessing. But if you do want to delegate access, then having the audience is basically telling us which API you're going to be talking to.
Okay.
So we can include it if you want, or we can leave it out. It just depends on.
So I guess the major question here would be, are we going to use it in this example?
I don't think we are.
Okay.
We're not going to have a backend API to call to,
Okay.
so we can omit it.
Okay, so let's leave that out. And if for anybody who's watching who wants to see like what that actually looks like, you can go look at the store, and the store is powered also by an API, and the API also uses the Auth0 stuff, so that you can see the how the let's see, where is it? In here and here, I think. Yeah, and this is how we actually process all this stuff, and we check the audience here. So this is all handled by Auth0 as well. If you want to see how to set up a backend server, this code will help you out. So let me post that into the chat. There is a link to the API. Here is a link to the store if you want to see a more complex Auth0 app. So coming back here, we've got our application settings. We just set up our .env. Really, this should not be. Let's see. Let me save this, and then I'm going to take these back to example values because this is the example file, not. Oops. Okay, so we'll save that. We're going to duplicate. Apparently, I'm not going to duplicate. I'll just create a new one. Okay, so I've got that. And then that also means that we need to install .env. So Gatsby ships with .env, but I found that it's confusing enough to try to deal, like, you have to create a .env.development, a .env.production, and .env kind of magically loads that stuff. In my experience, just for the sake of explicitness, I actually kind of prefer to just have a .env file that I manually load when I need it.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're going to do here in this file. So I will import .env from .env, and then we'll do .env.config. And so that'll give us these environment variables.
Okay, so it'll explicitly load them in.
Exactly, yeah. So we've got token, profile, email, good. All right, I think we're ready to move ahead here.
Cool. I think we should remove the audience field just because we removed it
You're
from
right.
in the example.
Absolutely. Okay. So yeah, we've got the domain, which is the Auth0 domain that we created. We've got the
Mhm.
client ID, which is just a token, so that I assume for identifying ourselves as legit.
Yep.
Redirect URI, so it knows where to send things back. Now, can you talk a little bit about what these are? Because this is actually
Yeah,
something that I'm
absolutely.
not super clear on.
Sure. So the response type tells us what we expect to get back from Auth0. And so here, since we're treating Gatsby as a single page application framework, we want to get back our JSON web tokens directly. So we're going to be using an OAuth 2.0 flow called implicit, which is going to give us the ID token and the
Mm-hmm.
access token and whatever else we request in the query string parameters in the URL.
Okay.
Now, this is typically only done with single page applications. If we were to build a traditional web app, instead of having token here, we would put code, which would give us back an authorization code, which would be a different opaque string that we would then exchange for tokens. But since we're building a SPA and we don't have a backend, we just get those tokens directly. And
Okay.
the difference between a token and an ID token is the ID token just gives us information about our specific user. So we can't use it to access any protected resources.
Okay.
It's just going to be a JSON web token that has information about who the user is and any of those scopes that we have underneath. So OpenID profile, we're going to get the user's, their name, nickname, avatar, information like that.
Mm-hmm.
The token property is going to give us an access token, which we actually do use to talk to an API. So when you request both, you're going to get an access token and an ID token, and the ID token will be meant for the client to you'll decode it and use the profile information to display, like, in the header, the user's profile and their name maybe, and then you'll use the access token to make calls to the API to get access to the protected resources.
Got it. So, like in this particular case, probably what we could get away with getting rid of the token.
Mhm.
I mean, I actually would like to keep it.
And we can actually keep it because what Auth0 will do is it's going to issue us an access token that we can use to call Auth0 endpoints. So if we wanted to update user profile information, we can use that access token in
Okay.
that case.
Yeah, let's play with that. So, all right. So we've got our Auth0 instance. What should we do next to kind of implement
Um,
this?
so the next thing we can do is build our login page. Or build a method to kick off the login process, because now we have everything in our Gatsby app configured where the app is going to know how to authenticate. Now we just
Okay.
have to create that method to kick off the login process.
Okay. So I do like a login method.
Hmm.
Um, cool. What goes in it?
And basically all we do is call our Auth0 constant and run the authorize method on it. So just called authorize.
Authorize like so.
Hmm.
Okay. And I think what I'm going to do is just for the sake of, uh, I'm just gonna. I don't know that I have to do this, but well, actually, let's try not doing that stuff, and then we'll see what changes at the end. And I
Okay.
assume we need to export this so that we can use it somewhere. Okay. So should we like try this somewhere, or do we need to do something else first?
Um, I think we can try it at this point just to see if the login process works. And if it does, if we get redirected back in the application, we won't be logged in, but we will have those access tokens and we'll at least prove that we're logging in at the moment.
Okay.
And then, so once we can successfully log in, then we're actually going to handle that authentication and make sure that uh, we actually log the user in on the client side.
Cool. Okay. So let me. Um, how do we want to do this? Let's just do for now. I'm going to just call it. And that should prevent us from seeing anything on this page. Oh, whoops. Put that in the wrong place. Okay. So we've got that. And then I'm going to create a callback page since that's where we're going.
Mhm.
And for this, I don't think we need anything because I think it's just going to, everything's going to be in the query string, right? But
Right.
so we'll just do a, I think this is just going to end up being a redirect ultimately if I remember how this all works. But
Mhm.
let's, for now, we'll just let everybody know
Yeah, we
where.
just display a message.
Okay, so export default callback, and we are ready to rock. So let's go back out here. Actually, let's start the app again, Gatsby develop. I should figure out what's running on that port and kill it. Uh-oh, I got all sorts of problems.
Failed to compile.
Oh, yep, this is my bad. I imported Auth0 as Auth0 and then failed to give it a different name. So I'm
Oh,
going
got it.
to, this is probably a terrible idea. No, that's not what I'm doing. That is a terrible idea. I'm going to change this to auth. And then I'm going to change this to auth.
Okay,
And
and I think in the new Auth0.js, I think you have to change that to Auth0.
yes. Okay, so that should be less. Yeah, that's going to cause significantly fewer heartache later. So let's do that. Yeah, I can't believe can't believe I was about to rely on capitalization as a Jesus.
Not one of the big problems in programming, naming things.
it it is, though that one really shouldn't have been. Why is that a thing? What is happening?
So what failed now?
Can't resolve FS in. Oh come on, am I doing what dumb stuff am I doing now?
The dependency was not.
Really, definitely don't want to install FS as a front end dependency. So that is me doing something wrong, which means that I need to do something different, which is I shouldn't be doing this here. Where am I doing it in the store? Let's look. Oh, so in the store, I'm just copy pasting things apparently. Come on now. So I'm just doing the same thing in .m.develop it, and it apparently is available. So we'll just have to copy paste this file. So we'll do that. We'll get rid of the .m stuff because I don't know how computers work, and we'll try it one more time. Let's develop.
Fingers crossed.
Okay,
Boom.
so nothing blew up. Let's come back out here and let's refresh. And hey, here we are. So, what should I do? Like log in with? Can I log in with Google? I don't have an account yet, right?
Uh,
Or I need
yeah,
to
so
sign
you
up.
don't have an account yet, so you can either sign up or sign up with Google, sign in with Google, or you can create a local email and password account. And if we go really quickly into the Auth0 dashboard, I can kind of show
Oh,
you where those settings are coming from.
hey, that's cool. It just apparently it knows me.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it's just, so that basically what that does is whenever you put in a valid email, we go out to a Gravatar and see if we can match it up,
Oh, I
and then
gotcha.
pull it in. But
Okay.
so if you go into the connections tab, um, this is where you would configure how you want your users to log in.
Okay.
So by default, we enable a classic database, meaning username and password or email and password connection. So we create a default one for you. And
Okay.
if you wanted, you could create as many of these as you wanted. If you wanted to use an external database that you already have of existing users, you can configure it in here and say, hey, instead of storing my users in Auth0, I already have a MySQL database store, a Postgres store.
Okay.
So when a user logs in, go over there, get their info, and log them in. And then for our social connections, here you can enable any OAuth2 compatible providers. So by default, we just turn on Google and we use the Auth0 development key. So you don't have to go and set up a Google developer account or a Facebook developer account to try it
Oh,
out.
cool.
You can just flip the switch, enable it, and see if it kind of meets your needs. And
Okay.
if you're happy with it, then you give us your specific, Auth0 or Facebook key or Google key.
Okay.
But that's why you can log in with Google right now because we
Yeah,
gave you
let's try
a
it.
development key.
Okay, so I am giving it a try. Oh, come on. Where was the um let's go with let's see, got to look this up. Google here. Okay. Alrighty. I'm authorizing. And now we're back on the callback page. And so we've got
Yep.
this access token, and there's a lot of it. Um, okay. So should we do like obviously we need to do stuff with this.
Yep.
So what would we do next?
So the next thing we would do is at this point, we have our login content working. So the user can click the login button, or in this case, we just call that login method as soon as they hit the account page.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to successfully log in on Auth0, successfully call back and get our access token and ID token. But now we need to tell our Gatsby app how to process those access tokens, ID tokens, and basically set the session for the user.
Right.
And the way that we do that in Auth0 is we usually create a method called handle authentication. And what this method and the Auth0 SDK has a handy method in here. So we could do this ourselves by getting the hash information, processing it, and doing all sorts of checking and getting the variables out. Or Auth0 provides a handy method called Parse Hash, which again lives on that auth object. So if we call auth.parsehash, um,
Like that?
and then, yep, just like that. And that one takes two parameters, and an error object first and the auth result second.
Okay.
And basically what happens here is once we call this method, it's going to go in and get those access tokens and ID tokens for us. So in this method, now we can check and make sure that we have the auth result.
So
Um,
this is a callback in parse hash?
yep.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. And so I'm going to say if error, because the error is going to come back null, right?
Um, yep. So we can call if error. So if we don't, if we do have an error, what we can do is throw a new error or redirect the user back to the login page, which might put them in a weird loop. So I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah.
But we would basically handle the error. If we didn't get an error though, then we would check for the auth result. So we can say if auth result is present, and then additionally, we always recommend checking to see if you got both an access token and an ID token. So we would do auth result dot access token and auth result dot ID token. So if you have all three of
Is it
these,
is it camel case?
mhm.
Okay.
So we
And auth result dot ID token.
mhm.
Okay.
So if we have all three of these, it means that our parse hash worked successfully. It was able to extract the access token and the ID token um, from the query string parameters from the hash fragment. And in this case, we would normally call a set session method. So we can go and create that method, or we can kind of do it in here. It depends on. Um,
Let's create it. So set session,
mhm.
and that's gonna, I assume, take the auth result.
Yes.
Okay.
So with the set session, there's a couple of different ways we can do this. So uh, for demo purposes, what a lot of people will do at this stage is use local storage to set their ID token and access token in local storage, so that they can log the user in and ensure that token is persisted,
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't have to log in every single time they refresh the page.
Sure.
But that does present a potential issue, if you become susceptible to a cross-site scripting attack, or somebody is able to, execute JavaScript code within your application. They can go into local storage, extract those tokens, and then basically
Right.
impersonate your user, which is something we don't want to do.
Yeah,
So
we
to limit the
let's
attack
not do that then.
to limit the attack vector, what we recommend is storing the ID token and the access token locally in memory. So here
Okay.
in this auth class, we can create variables for the access token and the ID token, and then
Okay.
just set them.
So I guess we could do like tokens, and then here we can do like tokens dot um, ID token
Mhm,
would be, or I guess I can do this up. ID token, and we'll make that like false or something, and then we can do what was the other one called? Access token.
mhm,
Okay, so we've got these, and then here we would do auth result dot ID token
mhm,
and access token. Okay, and so this is cool, but it's going to, anytime that we like refresh the page, it's going to log us
mhm.
out.
Yep. Which if we
So
had to
let's
do that, that would
pause.
be a terrible user experience. Every time the user refreshed the page or opened it up in a new tab, they would be forced to relog in. And if that was the case, in the real world, I don't think we'd be building as many spas as we currently do.
Right.
So there's a couple different ways we can handle this, and the way that we do it at Auth0 is we can renew the user's authentication information once the page is refreshed. So again,
Okay.
the Auth0 SDK has a method called renew session,
Okay.
and the way that this works is it's a little bit interesting. So basically, when you go to Auth0 and log in on that Gatsby livestream.auth0 domain, once you're authenticated, we'll set a session cookie on that domain that's going to hold your information on your logged in session.
Okay.
So by default, that doesn't do us much of anything in our Gatsby application because it's a different domain and we
Right.
can't share cookies. But what we can do is basically in our Gatsby app, open up an iframe when the page is loaded, hit that Gatsby live stream at Auth0 domain, check for the existence of that cookie. And if we do have a valid session identifier, a valid cookie, Auth0 is going to issue us a new set of ID and access tokens and shoot them in that iframe.
Okay.
It's basically going to render a script tag with the new ID token, with the new access token, and then what we're going to do is use post message to basically push that information from the iframe into our mainframe, into our Gatsby application, and basically run that set session again to set the tokens, and then we're good to go.
Okay. So how many of those things are things that I have to do?
Uh, None. So all you have to do is
That's
call
the right
the.
answer. That's the answer I wanted.
Yep. So I did want to explain it a little bit,
No,
just so the
that's
folks online know
yeah,
what's
that's
going
super
on. But
useful.
yeah, we do want to make it as simple and as painless for developers to implement. So if we want to go and write that method, it's we could just call it renew session.
And
And
is it so? Question: is this something that we would like call before we call login, or like how? Where is this getting actually called?
so this one we would call basically uh, the way that we recommend this method is you call it as soon as the page is loaded. So you would call it before login and call it basically every time the page is loaded.
Okay.
Um, that way, and have this method execute before you render anything to the DOM. That way, you don't have that weird flickering that some SPA frameworks will do, where
Okay.
this is going to take maybe half a second to process, and in that time, if you show the login page and then it blinks it and it shows the user's login information, it's kind of a crappy user experience.
Okay.
So we recommend running this method first every single time the page loads,
Okay.
and if that call gets made and the user isn't logged in, then that you could kind of just short circuit that method and presented the logged out experience, or you
Okay.
can redirect the user to log in at that point. It really depends on how you want to implement it.
Okay.
But our recommendation is to always run this method on page load before you render anything to the DOM,
Okay.
just to give the user the best experience.
Okay, so let's write this method, and then I think what we'll do is we can wrap the root element, and we'll do like an on component did mount or will mount, or where would we want to use that
Hmm.
component will mount, I guess, for the wrapper. That way we can check that like before the page loads, we can kind of set that variable. Um,
Right.
and that should, yeah, we'll have to play with that for a minute because I feel like I've done this before, but I can't really remember how. So let's cool. All right, so we're gonna export a new constant called renew session.
Hmm.
And does that take any arguments?
It does. So the first argument it takes is an empty object, or it takes a config object, but we could just pass an empty one because we're not going to be modifying anything. So the first one is going to be an empty object. The second is a callback that's basically the same as our handle authentication. So the first parameter is an error, and the second is
Sorry,
an auth result.
I think I got a little confused. So this method is called renew session as well.
Yep.
Okay,
Or
and
it's called a check session. Sorry.
check session. Okay, maybe I'll just rename that to be consistent. So we're gonna check
Yeah.
session. We're not gonna send it any config, and then the next thing that we do is um, this error auth result. And maybe what we should do is take
Yep. We
all
can
of.
basically copy and paste
I'm gonna take
that whole
all
thing.
of this and put it into set session because that way what we can do is we could take, how would we do this? Let's do this. Let's have this do the error and the auth result for us. And then we
Uh-huh.
can just pass it as the argument to both of these.
That
So
works.
now, yeah, so now it's kind of like this is our callback.
Hmm.
So we'll do same thing here, set session, and I'm going to move this below because I like to declare things before I use them. All right, so that looks pretty clean. We've got check session, runs it, and then does a set session. The handle authentication, it parses the hash and then runs set session. So those are doing roughly the same thing, but one is so parse hash is after we've explicitly logged in, and check
Hmm.
session is after Auth0 has opened that iframe, checked for a cookie, and grabbed those
Yep.
details. Okay. Cool. So we've got those, and then we need to come out here, and we'll have to do a. How are we going to do this? We're going to do Gatsby browser.js, and I'm going to wrap root element, and this one comes with, what's it called? Gatsby wrap root element has takes the element, which is down here. Yeah, it takes the element. And we are able to do whatever we want in here, and it's going to return our thing, which is the element. So I think we won't need to actually wrap it as much as we're just trying to do something before it boots.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my assumption. But that's going to have to be a class because we need the. How do you do that in hooks? I'm not going to do hooks today. Let's write what I know. We'll do auth check or session check. Extends React component, and that's going to have a render method, which is going to take. It's really just going to return React fragment with this props children, I believe, because then what we'll be able to do is take this and it'll be session check. So then that changes. We need a component will mount. And that way, so the reason that I'm using wrap root element is that the page elements unmount and remount every time that you navigate. And so if we were putting this on like our layout component or on the account component, what would happen is every time you click the link, you would end up rerunning the session check.
Got it.
The root component only mounts once when you first load a Gatsby site, and then it doesn't load again as you move between routes. So what we're doing here is we're effectively saying when you very first load the page, make sure that you run this check and then don't do it again, which I believe is the desired behavior because they would have to actually navigate away from the page and then back to it to end up getting the check to run again. And that's the only time that we would clear the session out of memory. So with that being said, we are going to do, let's see, we need to import the session check. Import check session from source utils auth. And what are we doing? We're just going to check the session. And how do we actually want to make this do a thing? We want to probably set like a loading state or like a, right? Like a load, like.
Good question. Would we do that in the check session code, or would we do it here?
We would do it here, I think, because what's going to end up happening is we'll probably want to have like a callback that calls this set state and like sets loading to false.
Okay, got it.
And that way we can set the state to loading true. And then we're going to do like, let's see, we'll do. Oh man, it's been a while since I've written one of these. If loading is false, do that. Otherwise, return null. That seems silly. That's not what we want. We want that. Is that right? Am I doing terrible things?
This loading.
Okay, so I'm saying if we're not loading, render this.
Display the, yep.
And I think like this is kind of gnarly where it's kind of a hacky thing.
It did take me a while to wrap my head around the that convention.
But we are XYZ in the chat is saying we could do this using use effect with React hooks. Let's get this running because we got about 35 minutes left in the stream. So let's get this running, and then if we have extra time, I would actually love to come back and refactor this to be hooks because it's just such a cleaner API, as we'll see shortly when I start writing the handle function. So handle check session is going to be, it's going to be just an empty thing that will do this set state, and it's going to be loading false. But we're going to have to come up here and do like this handle check session bind this, and I have to do that twice, right? I think that's how that works. And then what we can do is in check session, we can say that it's going to call handle check session at the end, and then come back here and say callback. And now I've complicated things because set session then needs to accept an additional callback that I am not able to send like this. So we go to composition, functional programming. Here we go, everybody. So I'm going to do a callback here, and we're going to call this one without a callback, which means that this needs to default to be a no op. Whoops. Here. There. So effectively what I'm doing right now is I'm saying that so we call this function once, and it's going to return another function, which is our actual callback for Auth0. By default, it does nothing. But if we pass it a callback, so we're calling set session callback, which returns another callback, and that's the one that we'll use with Auth0. But that way we can pass through this callback and actually get this to fire. So all of that being done, this theoretically should work. So let's maybe just let this rip and see what happens. I'm gonna start this up. We're gonna see if anything explodes, and let's go to oh no. Uses both common. Oh, I know what I did. I'm mixing my my styles here. I'm doing imports, but then let's see export.
Oh, got it.
Yep, that's my fault. Getting into the in between worlds here. Gatsby develop and 8001 is fine. Using a unified syntax here. I have do not mutate state directly. Oh, is that because I did like set the state in the constructor?
I
thought you didn't.
That I'm not sure of.
Maybe I just do that out here. Whoops. Because I think we're set up for this. Does that work? Let's try that, see if we get that same error. Okay, so it seems to like
Nice.
that. That might be because it just straight up doesn't work, but okay, so let's go back to here. I'm going to go to the account page, and that did nothing, which means we got an error. This time though, why am I getting I'm getting a 400 error code on the authorize page.
So if you click on it, let's see. Got an error. Something went wrong.
Could be a misconfiguration or a service outage.
Oh, I think I know what happened. So the reason that happened was if you are using Auth0 development keys and you log in with a social provider like Google,
Mm-hmm.
the check session will not work until you add your own custom keys. If you log in with the username and password, then it's going to work just fine.
Got it.
So one thing we can do is,
Go clear my thingy.
uh-huh.
All right, let's go in here. Is this going to
So
work
we'll
though?
so we'll actually have to go into the Auth0 domain because we're not storing the cookies.
Right.
Uh, so we're going to have to, if you refresh the page on localhost 8001,
Mm-hmm.
go to the console and follow that URL. Just like open it up in a browser window
Open in a new tab.
and then clear the cookies there.
Got
So
it.
just open up uh, application cookies or just clear the whole storage. And
Yeah.
now you should be able to go back into Gatsby, refresh, and get the authorize.
Still doesn't like it. Let's look again.
Um,
Okay. All right. So let's look at these cookies again. There are no cookies.
mhm.
Nothing here. Nothing here. Okay, it looks empty.
What if we scroll down to see if there's a better error code on the, uh, yeah, so see details for this error. Um, okay, so in this case, we do have to add the localhost 8001 callback to the origin,
Okay.
and
Uh-oh.
you're gonna have to
Oh,
relog
because I
back in
cleared
because
all
we
my
cleared all
stuff.
the. Yeah.
Okay. What did I use for this? Let's go back to here, and I'm going to Auth0. Here. All right. JSON plus live stream at. No, why do I keep doing that? GatsbyJS.com. Okay, applications here, and then
Mhm.
I'm going to.
Just scroll down to the allowed web origins. And then here, I think, yep, you just need the domain.
Okay.
Uh,
Do I need anything else? Allowed
you
origins
could,
here.
you don't need the cores, or actually we could add it just to be safe.
Sure.
And then you could also add the allowed callback or the allowed logout URLs, just in case we add login at the end. It would be good to have,
Okay. And is this going to be like logout kind of
um,
thing, or is it?
I so is it anywhere else valid?
The URL that you use in return to. Oh,
Oh
so that
yes,
can just be the
we
home
wouldn't.
page.
Yep.
Okay. So let's just save that. Okay. Back here. So now it is throwing an error. It's odd that it. Oh, I guess I need to like set that up somehow. Let's have it throw an error that is stringified. Login required, login required. Okay, so that's what we wanted, but it's not
Mhm.
triggering the thing.
So in here, if we wanted to have the user log in that error, we could, could call the login method, which is going
Okay,
to redirect the user to the login page. Or if we, so right now we're explicitly throwing an error that tells us that you need to be logged in.
or wait, what was it? It
But
was error, login required. We can just call login.
mhm.
Let's try it. Okay, so we've now logged in. I'm going to sign up with a different email address.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to... Oh, come on. All right, I'll generate a password for you. You and your security. Okay, let me...
You could go into the dashboard and turn those down to make it
Nah,
work easier.
I shouldn't take shortcuts. Okay, so that's here. Let's generate one. Got it. Okay, I have a password. Let's do it. All right, so I am authorizing Gatsby to look at my profile and email. And I've gone into the callback, which should have set the session, which I can't access anyways. So then if I go to any page, let's go to or actually, we're not checking the login right now, are we? So we would want to like display it somewhere.
Right.
So how what should we do there? Let's add, I
Um,
guess, on the account page. Is it gonna? So if I'm looking for a login, is it going to still bounce me to the login page even if I'm already logged in?
um, no, it shouldn't. So as long as you're logged in, as long as you have that token, you should be good to go.
Okay,
Um,
so it is still bouncing me to the callback page. Like I'm already logged in. So we would want
uh-huh.
to check that we're logged in and then not do that. So maybe we go back to our auth page and how do we check that we're logged in? We're just gonna do a like is
But
logged in.
we could do an is authenticated. We could write like an is authenticated method. And just for simplicity's sake, we could just check and see if we have an ID token. And if we do, we'll say, we're logged in. Uh, Otherwise, we'll treat it as we're not logged in.
Okay, so we can just do that. Let's export it. And then in login, I can do a, I guess I gotta go here. And I'm gonna import is authenticated. And we'll say if is authenticated. We'll do that. And this is not exactly the way that we should do that, I don't think, but it does get us the desired result. So if let me add some like basic links here so that we can try this out.
Mhm.
Let's do a nav component, and I'm going to pull in link from Gatsby, and it'll be account and home, account settings, and account billing. So let's make those work. Okay. Oh, whoops. So I'm going to need a fragment here so that that works properly. And now I can move between these pages, and we've got our... Okay, so that's what we wanted. I'm going to add some spaces here. That'll be a little easier. So okay, so now we've actually got content. Good deal, good deal. All right, so what happens next?
So the next thing we can do is, so now for the entirety of our application, you have to be authenticated. Otherwise, if you're not, you're just going to be redirected to the login page. Next thing we can do is we can make use of that access token and actually call the Auth0 API to get the user profile information.
Okay,
And maybe display it on the page, display it on the account page, or just
sure.
console login to show that it works.
Yeah, let's show it. That should be fun. So I've got login, I've got set session, got check
Mhm.
session. What's this one called?
So let's call this one get profile or user profile.
Okay. Do I need
And so
any
this,
arguments to it, or is it?
uh, so this one, here we have a callback in there, but not sure if we're going to use it.
Okay.
So let's deal with that and see how it goes. So there is a method on the Auth0 SDK called client.userinfo.
Like this.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And then in here, all we're going to pass, the first parameter we're going to pass into it is our access token that we saved once the user is logged in. And again, here we have that in-memory tokens object.
Okay.
And then the second parameter is a callback function that takes an error and then the user profile information.
Okay. So error, user profile. And so here we would probably want to put the user profile into memory as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, we could create a new object.
And this one we can probably just leave empty, you think? And we want to
I think
export
so, yeah.
that because we want to be able to use that. Okay. And so this we would do user. Oh, now we're going to need to set these explicitly. Do you know what, like, is it going to be like the user profile dot email dot things like that?
Do we have to set them explicitly or could we just pass the
Well,
whole object to it?
I guess we can do that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we've got that, and we should do error handling, but I'm going to skip it for now. Let's do this, and on the account page, we can import get user, what did we call that? Oh, get profile.
Get profile.
And down here, we'll do, get profile should return the user. Yes, that's what we want. So this shouldn't actually be exported. So we're going to user equals get profile. And to start, I guess we can just do something like stringify that profile.
Mm-hmm.
And we get back nothing. Okay. So what's missing in here? Let's try.
Is it because the user object is in the callback?
I'm not sure. Yes, it is. Okay, so that adds a layer of complexity here. Is there a way to? How would we want to do this? Because what I want is a way to. I guess maybe I just grab this after login then instead. And this just
We could do that.
returns the profile.
Yep. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Yeah, let's just do that. That seems okay. Do this. It's still coming back empty on us. Okay, so
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, but our first load came back empty. That seems bad. So maybe the callback goes in here. And
boom.
Now we get it. Okay, perfect. So that gives us the result we want. And so we've got the nickname, we've got the name, picture, which I think these are all going to be default stuff because I used a goofy thing.
Yep.
But that's pretty slick. All right, so at this point we've got an app. It's letting us log in. We can go to our homepage. How would one log out here?
So we could just create a method. So this is another one of those questions that we leave up to the user. So if you wanted to log out locally in your Gatsby application, you can just nullify the ID token and the access token, and the user will be none the wiser. The other thing we can do is actually call the logout method on the auth service. That's going to go to the Gatsby live stream domain and actually log the user out for real. So I think we should do it that way as a.
Yeah. So we would still want to set tokens, access token, to false and
Yeah.
tokens.id token to false. And then we would
Mhm.
call auth dot.
I believe it's just log out.
Okay. Is there anything that we need to do with that? I guess we would also want
Nope.
to set user equals nothing. Okay, so now that we've got that, we can add it up here to our options down here, I guess. And we will say a href log out, and on click, we will log out, and I need to import that. All right. Okay, so it didn't like my... Oh, that's my fault. And so now I should have a logout option. I'm going to add a space in here because it's just hard to read otherwise. Okay, now if I click this, what should happen is it should kill this and then go to Auth0 and fully log us out. And then I believe because we're on the account page, do we need to pass like a where to go next kind of thing?
We don't, because we set that property earlier in the
So
Auth0 dashboard. So I
so
think
it should then, when we click this button, take us back to the home page.
I think so.
Okay, let's try it. It bounces to the callback because because it checked the session. And since it checked the session, it then would have tried to log us in, but shouldn't we have been logged out?
That is a good. So what happens if you refresh the page now? It still logged us in.
Did it log us in? Hold on, let's check. Oh yeah, we're fully logged in.
It did. So maybe that logout method is wrong. Let me figure out what the correct one is.
And I'm just looking through these docs here.
So.
Oh, okay. So there's a thing here with local storage that's setting like a flag for is logged in. Do we need to worry about that?
We don't. So if we wanted to do it the quick start way, we would have created an additional property called is logged in or is logged out,
Okay.
where we set it. But since we just did it based off of the existence of the token, it kind of nullified that one.
Okay.
I'm looking at the Auth0.js SDK, and the logout method does take an object where we can pass the return to property. So maybe it didn't log us out properly. So let's go back into the code and add the return to. So basically, when we call logout, we pass in an object, which is return to, and then just go back to localhost 8001.
Okay, let's try that. And I'm just gonna, just for the sake of being extra super sure, we'll restart. I don't think that has any effect on anything, but
Right.
Okay, I've got that. I've refreshed the page, and I am now logging out, which took us home and then bounced us back in. So I think the problem might be that here's my theory. We're calling this check session, and the check session has us log in. So check session, when it runs the set session, looks for if the login is required and then bounces us back out. So should we, if we set that local storage of like is logged in and logout clears it, then what we could do is we could say if login is required and the user is logged in,
Uh-huh.
then run this. Otherwise, you could skip it. Does that seem like a reasonable?
I think so. Yeah, we could try that.
Okay, so let's set session. This is where we would set everything.
Uh-huh.
And so we'll do a local storage set item is logged in is true. And then on log out, which is up here somewhere, we'll set that to false.
Mm-hmm.
And in set session, we'll say is logged in would be local storage get item. And so if is logged in and we got an error.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then, I actually don't know why I just restarted. I don't think I needed to do that. Let's go back out to here. And once this boots, it's booted. We are going to go to the account. I'm going to log out. And what I'm hoping will happen is that, well, let's actually check. In our application now, if I go to local storage, I should have one thing set. It is logged in is true. Now, when I click logged out, that changes to false. It still did it though.
But it's
like resetting it to true. So
right.
it's resetting.
We just
it
don't
to
want you to log out. Auth0 is very needy, it looks like.
Okay, so the set session, maybe what we should do is
if
instead,
we look
if
one
we're not logged in, let's just bail altogether and not worry about it at all. And so, oh wait, but I need to, all right, let's see, const is logged in, is local storage, get item is logged in. Okay, and so that then, oh wait, something broke. What broke? Oh, just me touching stuff. Let's get rid of this. And now, presumably, what will happen is when we're logged in, it will run the check. So if I go to the home page, it's going to run that check. We're logged in. If I go back to the account page, we're still logged in. If I log out, it should set is logged in to false, and it shouldn't even attempt to renew the session. But it does.
It does.
Oh my God. What
so what do we do? One thing we could check is maybe console log or check the network tab to make sure that we are going to Auth0 and actually logging out.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
I think we might be just clearing the session locally, but not actually going to Auth0 and logging out, which is what allows us to re-authenticate.
Okay. So is logged in is coming up true. That's what we want. Let's go to this network tab. I'm going here, and I'm clicking logged out. Did it just dump everything? It did. So let me persist the log. Let's try that again. Okay. So I've clicked it. We have gone to I'm not sure which of these would actually be is there like a /logout command?
There should be, or there should be one that goes out and logs this out, but I'm not seeing it.
But that doesn't change the fact that this straight up should not be happening because when we click this button, we're logged in as false, but it's still trying to log us in. So if I go back here, I'm logged in as true.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I click log out, it eliminates the tokens, the user, and sets is logged in to false, and then
Right.
calls logout, which should bounce us out to the home page, which it does. When
Right.
it bounces us out to the home page,
That check session gets called in the root element.
But it shouldn't, because is logged in should be set to false. And
Right.
if we're not logged in, it should immediately return and not call this.
Mm-hmm.
So that means to me that something silly is happening. I want to see, maybe it's something completely unexpected. If this hits, then we're getting like really bizarre behavior. So let's see what happens. I'm going to preserve the log. And let's try the log out. So it's like it never hits it.
Right.
It navigates directly to callback.
So.
Oh my God. Okay, I know what's going on. This is okay. The pitfalls of building apps like this. I'm not preventing the default behavior.
Oh.
So it's navigating here, which I bet triggers a check. And it's probably not giving the logout time to execute. So let's try this again. Okay, so we got closer, but it still bounced us to the login. And that's not good because that's not what we want it to do. Okay.
And it does that in the callback where we run check session.
Okay, so I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to go back to this home page, and I'm going to refresh. Okay, so it is happening in this handle check session. What I'm going to do is I'm going to console log local storage get item is logged in. And what should happen is it should be false. Okay.
Yep.
So then, oops, what did I just do? Here, when we call check session, which is being pulled in from auth, check session should, where is check session? Here. If is logged in is false, it should give us, did I save the other one? Here. Okay. Is logged in is false, and it's still firing. So let me go in here, and let's try one more time. If I get rid of this check, does it still do that thing? So let's refresh. Is logged in is false. Like, is it just something silly like that? No, but it's still not getting in here. So what the hell am I doing wrong? Is logged in is false. It's apparently a, oh my God.
Good item.
Is it a string?
Yep.
Thanks, local storage. Okay, that's cool. So, all right, that should solve our problem then. Yeah, so we're not logged in. It is breaking our. Oh, I need to just call the callback then. Yes. All right.
There.
So now we've got an actual auth flow that's going to work properly. And we can add on this home page just for the sake of making it workable.
For the sake of completeness.
Yeah, let's do this. So we'll do, this is going to be a paragraph. And this one is going to be a link, which will auto import from Gatsby. That's going to link to the account page. And it's going to say, go to your account. So now it says go to your account. We're not logged in. I'm going to click it. It did bounce me to that page without, let's see. So what we should probably do then is in this account page, we should do something like if is authenticated, call login and return null, or return redirecting to login. Let's try that. So if I go back to the home page, I have my button. And now instead of seeing a flash of the unpopulated content, what we should see is a redirecting. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So that is that's kind of what we wanted. We could also, if we rendered nothing, it would be, or we could render like a loading spinner or whatever. I think redirecting to login is fine. So that way, if the request is slow or something, it tells you at least what you should be expecting to happen. Well, cool, Auth0. I mean, we've done it. We've built
We got it.
we built a working app. So this is this is something we could take in a lot of different directions, but really for the for kind of the short and long of it, we're in pretty decent shape here.
Right.
We've got
The foundation's there now. If you did have an API that you wanted to have access to, all you would have to do is update the audience to let you know which API you're talking to, and you already have the access token available, so you can start making calls, getting the protected data. But at this point, we have client-side authentication working, so you can have your user log in, log out, and display their profile information within the Gatsby app.
Okay, so the last thing that I want to try here, because we're over time, I'm going to try to build this and just make sure that there aren't any browser things that we need to keep in mind. So let's get it built. This is the part where it's going to explode if I missed anything. Come on. Hey, uh-oh. Okay, so here's the problem. Auth.authorize is not a function. So that is, again, because we are nullifying Auth0 during the build. So here, where we have the is browser, we can just add these checks. So if it's not the browser, we just return.
Okay.
And so in any of the places where we are going to try and call that, see, logout won't be called, set session shouldn't be called, check session might be called. So let's do that. Actually, that one shouldn't be called because we only call it in the browser. Let's try one more time. Gatsby build.
And is that kind of the convention you guys recommend for working between the browser and the server using the is browser kind of utility method?
Yeah, typically speaking, like what you're running into is if something relies on the browser to function, you can check if that window object exists, and it's not going to work on the client side or on the browser, or sorry, on the server side anyways, because on that server side it would not have what it needed. It would break. So we just short circuit that thing and skip it altogether. So we're on localhost 9000 now. So I'm gonna switch this over so that we can run a quick test, and then we will wrap this up. So in addition to callback, we've got this one, we've got this one, and we've got this one.
Yeah, I think
just in case, we'll do that one. Save those changes. Did I miss anything?
You might need to add commas between them, or maybe not. It did save them properly. I guess you could either new line or add a comma, so you should be good.
You can either new line?
I think
by comma
it's
set. Yeah, let's do that. You're right. I'm gonna because it
it
says
might
comma
work, but
separate. I should read instructions. Okay, saving that, and I'm gonna go here. And what I should be able to do now is that's not the right one. This is the one. We can go to our account. It's going to redirect us to the login, which failed because domain option is required. Oh, that's because
oh,
we need to copy
the
this.
environment variables. Yep.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to take this, copy it, and this is the confusing part of some of this is like like this is very useful because obviously there are cases where you're going to have like a development environment and a production environment.
Yep.
It's just confusing when you haven't used it before. So let's
Uh,
do
you,
that.
you do need to change the redirect domain to 9,000.
Oh, yes, I do. Good call. Let me stop that. Start it again. And this hopefully all continues doing the same things. Okay, let's serve it. And let's try this one more time. So we've got our homepage, redirects us. We're going to log in with, or I guess I'll sign up because, or no, I can log in with my account that I created. Let me go over here and find it. It was, oh shit, what was that?
I think it was like other tests or something.
Is it going to show me in here if I look at
Mhm.
other test? Yes. Good memory. Okay, got the callback. Oops.
Yep.
Oh man, I can't spell. There we go. Okay,
There
so
you are.
that's that. We have successfully built an app. It's building. It's working in production as expected. And oh,
We did pass in the
yeah. So to fix
that's
that, um, I'm I'm not actually going to build it and test it again. I'm just going to show how that works. We're going to go in here, and we would use the where's the logout? Logout is here. We're going to do env dot or process. Wow, process dot env dot auth0. Oh, we would need to add like a logout.
or you can even just do the HTML whatever the current domain is, and that should work.
Um,
Like location.href or
oh yeah, we could do that, couldn't we? What is that? Location.href.
I think so.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah, why not? Let's say that that would work. And you know, we won't test that because now we're just kind of down to the end of the stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, Otto, thank you so much for taking the time. We are a little over time at this point. For everybody who is watching, you should definitely go follow Otto on Twitter. He is Kukic Otto. Go. Wow, is that your dog?
It is. Yeah.
It's a beautiful dog. Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. Go follow Otto. Otto, any parting words before we wrap it up?
Well, thank you, Jason. I think you convinced me to give Gatsby a second look and build some cool applications with it. I'm a big fan of React, and it really is just React
That's the
with
idea.
a lot of really cool helper functions. And I know somebody in the comments asked if we could compare and contrast Hugo and Gatsby. And I know we're running out of time, but I think they're both really solid frameworks. I think Gatsby gives you a lot more, at least from what I've done. Gatsby has a lot more ways to work with data, where Hugo is really just a markdown static site generator. So in that regard, it's a little bit faster. But if you need flexibility, I think Gatsby is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I think one of the major differentiators for me is like Gatsby is written in React. So if you spend most of your time working with JavaScript and React, Gatsby is a little more approachable from the standpoint of just like being able to build a thing. When you need to customize it, you're writing JavaScript code. Hugo is so fast, it's so powerful. If you're just writing a blog, it's amazing, but it's written in Go. And so if you don't know Go,
Yep.
you have to use Go templating. And like Go templating is it's very counterintuitive coming from a
It's
JavaScript
less than
land.
ideal.
I like again, I think it's I used Hugo for a long time before I switched my personal site over to Gatsby, and I had done all sorts of cool like custom things with it. So you really can get a lot out of Hugo, up to and including like I had embedded React mini apps into certain blogs and stuff like that. So there's a lot you can do with Hugo, and it's a very flexible, like cool piece of technology. For me, it was what really was kind of the final decision point is that I spend almost all of my time developing in JavaScript. So having my blog being powered by something that was full JavaScript made it so much easier for me to manage and extend it.
Sweet. No, I totally agree with that. I think if you're a JavaScript developer, you're going to be more at home with Gatsby. I'm a huge Go fan, so that's why I kind of erred on the side of Hugo, just because I wanted to learn Go better and just kind of wanted to have a unified working environment.
Totally.
But both definitely have a place, and I think if I had to recommend a SSR to start with, I would definitely say go with Gatsby, try it out, just because of like I've been super impressed by you guys having the flexibility of the different data stores. I mean that to me was a huge game changer.
Yeah, that was kind of what ultimately convinced me to come over to Gatsby was that type of flexibility. It's just so exciting to me. Anyways, okay, Otto, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. Thanks for I kept you like 10, 15 minutes longer than I expected to. So
No
I
worries.
really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who's watching. We will post this up on YouTube. We will share the links in the description for the video, both on Twitch and on YouTube. And if you have any other questions, you can find Otto at Kukichato, and you can always follow me on Twitter at jlangsdorf, or subscribe on the Twitch stream so that you can get the future Twitch streams. Because coming up next, we have a really exciting one that I am really, really looking forward to, which is I'm going to pair up with, I believe, oh no, what's happening? Is it go away? I don't want to look. Yeah, we are going to do a pair programming session with Glitch. Potch over at Glitch is going to teach me how Glitch works. It's this very cool, like online collaborative platform. And then on April 4th, I'm pairing up with David Capiano to learn about state machines, which are a thing that I keep hearing about, and I have no idea how they work, and I feel like I should. So he's going to make sure that I can patch up that gap in my knowledge. So we'll see you next Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for following along today.